You know, when you watch me, I know you're thinking, what is wrong with her bangs? I might even mention this before. Actually, my bangs are one length. It's just that humidity and, sleeping on them wrong messes them up and makes them look uneven. But I have to mention that because of my vanity. This week we looked at characterization, and I already did a video about Poe's story, The Cask of Amontillado. And I, held off on talking about Faulkner until today because you had a quiz about it. But I do want to talk about the characterization in Faulkner's story. And first of all, I had asked before, what is the point of view in this story? And many people usually say it's third person, but of course it isn't. It is first person. The narrator is one of the townsmen, and I say townsman because it sounds like a male speaking, and Faulkner, is a male, and he wrote the story. And that is through whose eyes we are seeing what is taking place. Now, is it accurate? I think it is. I think he's a reliable narrator, but he is very limited in what it is that he knows. And I want to talk a little bit about foreshadowing after I talk about characterization, because I want you to start looking for foreshadowing in the stories as we read them. But back to the characterization. I had posed some questions for you to consider in your journal. And one of the heavy things for this story that I think is important is the historical context, because the historical context influences the characters in this story very much. Emily is a product of her culture and her time, and it affects everything about her, including her character and her personality. She is from the antebellum South, which means prior to the Civil War. She is Southern nobility. Her father had a high standing, and she gained her identity from her father. Now, she would have continued to gain her identity through her husband, but she didn't marry. And she probably didn't marry because of her father and his expectations for her. So this then permeates Emily's life after the war and after her father dies. Are there women, and I ask you, would Emily still be the same if she had grown up in another era? I think that if Emily had grown up during the 60s and the 70s, as I did, I don't think she would have been Miss Emily. I think she would have been Ms. Emily. Because despite the fact that she was so dependent upon her father in her life and, was not taught to go out and make a living for herself, she's still a very strong woman. And she illustrates her strength when the new mayor comes along with some of the city council and says, hey, you need to pay your taxes. And of course, the old-time mayor had told her that she didn't have to pay her taxes because the father had loaned the town some money. That's a lie. They excused her taxes out of deference and respect for who she was. And as you might know, after the war, many Southerners lost their fortunes, and Emily's father was among them. She had no money to pay her taxes. Now, she did work, and I'm using that term loosely. She gave lessons on china painting because that was all she knew what to do. She was not going to go out and wash clothes. She wasn't going to become a seamstress or any of those things because they were beneath her. China painting was an occupation, and not even an occupation, a pastime of upper-class women, and so that's what she did. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with the movie Cold Mountain with Nicole Kidman and Renee Zellweger, or however you say her name. At one point in that movie, Nicole Kidman says, I was taught how to embroider, I was taught how to do fancy stitchery, but I don't know how to darn a sock. That is where Miss Emily is. She is basically I don't want to say useless, but she has no idea how to even go out and get a job, and she's not going to anyway because it is beneath her. So the historical context of this story is very important to the characterization. It's not only important in the characterization of Miss Emily, but also her black manservant. And I'm not going to say his name because there might be somebody who slipped through and didn't take the test yet, and that was one of the questions. But the question, I asked the question, for you to consider in your journals is, the black manservant is free. The Civil War has been fought, and this is at least 40 or 50 years later after the Civil War. Why does he stay in this mansion, this big house that's falling down around him and Miss Emily? He stays because he, too, is a product of his environment. Where is he going to go, and what is he going to do? He grew up in this house, and Miss Emily is his family. And so he stays with her. I'm going to continue in a minute.